Hello, and thank you for joining us. Let's look at chapter 1 of the Quran. Let's read it together to just pick one or two things for us to establish both the speaker from the Quran and whether the speaker himself is not sure of his direction and of his destination. Because chapter 1 of the Quran said so many things that is so striking. Remember, we will keep reminding you about the verse of the Quran, which did say that the Quran is actually word for word from Allah, because the original copy of the Quran is with Allah in the mother of the book with him. According to chapter 43 of the Quran, verse 3 to 4, and chapter 85, verse 22, it said that the Quran is in the mother of the book, that is the original Quran. This what we have on earth now is actually a copy of the Quran. Yes, that's what the Quran said. And you can confirm that in the comment section. You can also check that to confirm what we are saying here. Now, chapter 1 of the Quran said so many things. That if the Quran is actually, since the Quran is actually from Allah, and if the Quran indeed is from Allah, then we are confused on what Allah is actually saying in that very chapter 1. Because the Quran started with prayers, with praises, with thanksgiving, with asking for guidance. We wonder, is it Allah that is asking for guidance? Or is it someone that is writing like an introduction for Allah instead of Allah himself speaking in that very chapter? Remember, the whole Quran as it is, according to the Quran itself, it is a complete book, a complete revelation of Allah, which he did send down in the heart of Prophet Muhammad, according to chapter 26 of the Quran, verse 192 to 194, that the Quran actually come down in the heart of the Prophet by the powerful spirit of Allah, by the trustworthy spirit, sometimes referred to as Angel Gabriel, sometimes refers to as the mighty one, sometimes refers to as the trustworthy, whichever one. The fact is, the Quran was received by Prophet Muhammad, and it was not received in a written form like we have it today in a codex form. No, it was received into his heart, and therefore he then keep reciting it. And the people that were with him will now help him to keep writing what he was reciting, according to what the Quran and the Muslims' traditions claim. And that is what we are so concerned about, because so many things have been said that looks ridiculous, that looks unbelievable, that looks is absurd even to say, the least to say. But I'm not here to ridicule Islam, but we are here to analyze Islam based on its claim, based on its scriptures, and based on what it did want us as human beings to actually believe in and to act in accordance. Why are we so worried about Islam in this case? Why do we talk about Muslims, about Islamic books? Because Islam itself did claim that itself, the religion was meant for mankind. And Prophet Muhammad is a sign and a warner to all mankind, not to the Arabs. Though there are verses that actually did explain that Prophet Muhammad was sent down for the Arabs, for these Arab speakers who had no warners, who had no anyone who had explained or should have explained to them about things concerning God. He was specifically sent for the Arabs and to the Arabs. But that's not what we are talking about today. We are focusing on the fact that the speaker in the Quran is somehow misleading or confused, or is seeking for guidance, or is not sure of what to do, and at the end he ended up praising Allah, even though we are made to believe that it's actually Allah that is speaking there. And we wonder, should Allah be praising himself, or should Allah be seeking guidance from who? And if Allah is praising himself, then why did he have to create human being? Because he would not need mankind, because automatically he can praise himself. And if Allah is seeking guidance, who is he seeking guidance from in that case? And if Allah is showing thanksgiving, who is he thanking? Because that's what we see in chapter 1 of the Quran. That is our word. However, let's read it together so that it would not be my thing. Let's read it together in that regard, right? Yes, so I want us to, let's go look at it. So, as we read, it said here, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, in the name of Allah. Ordinarily, Allah should have said here, in my name and in my honor, I am presenting this Quran to you as a light and guidance for your salvation. But we found Allah saying something different. He is saying here, in the name of Allah, which suggests that Allah is speaking about Allah, not about himself. Let's go. He said, all praises and thanks be to Allah, not be to myself. He didn't say, let thanks and praise be to myself as the most merciful, the most beneficent, and the most gracious. He didn't say that. He rather said, thanks and praises be to Allah, speaking for another Allah somewhere. Let's continue. The Allah that he is saying here continues to say that the Lord of the Alamin, that is mankind, jinns, and all that exist. So the Allah here is actually a Lord over all the jinns, all the mankind, human beings, and all that exists. Animals, mountains, waters, everything. It is actually from that same Allah. Verse 3 continues. That Allah is actually the most beneficent, the most merciful. And he continues, the only honor and the only ruling judge of the day of judgment. In other words, the day of resurrection. The only honor and the ruler. Here, the translation here, translator try to manipulate us here because we have so many different versions of the Quran. I don't mean translation. I mean different versions of the Quran. There are Quran, like for instance, we will talk about this in another video, but there is one Quran, it's called Hafs. Hafs refers to Allah in this verse as the honor of the day of judgment. That is Hafs. While Waf refers to this as the ruler of the day of judgment. So it has two different and even more. So the translator on this one, this very verse I'm reading, it's saying that he's putting the two together, the honor, and he didn't put in bracket the only ruling judge, to make us believe that it's referring to the same thing, which is not. However, we will talk about that in a different video. Now, let's continue. It said, you, Allah, we worship. Huh? Who is speaking here? We? Who is speaking here? You, Allah, we, verse 5 of chapter 1. We worship you, Allah, and you alone we ask for help. We ask for help, and we worship you alone. This is clearly stating that Allah here can never be the same speaker in this verse and can never be referred to as the same supreme being or almighty God, because he cannot be speaking to himself in this way. And if the Muslims in any form will want us to believe this, then we will go further to question the following verse. Listen to the following verse. It says, guide us to the straight path way. Guide us. So the person here, the writer who's supposed to be the Allah, who's supposed to be the speaker here, is asking Allah to guide him to the straight path. And it's not just him alone, he's saying us. It's clear here that the speaker here must be a normal human being who is confused, who is begging for direction, who is not sure of what to do and how to go about it, but is seeking for direction. And that is why he's asking for guidance. He is asking for direction. He is asking for and is confirming about what God should do for him in this case. Now, the last verse said, the way of those on whom you have bestowed your grace. So put us on the right path of those whom you have graciously blessed. Guide us straight path. Put us right. So in other words, they are simply saying that don't also mislead us to the path of those whom you have favored and you have been blessing. You have bestowed favor upon, you have been gracious to. Our question here is that, could Allah have been misleading others that makes this prayer to specifically ask that they should be guided on the right path and that the path must be for those who have successfully guided and been successful in their guidance by Allah? Could it be that? We are asking this question because the Quran suggests that. Do you know why we ask this? If you look at it, we have find out in chapter 3 of the Quran. We will read that, verse 54. And chapter 4 of the Quran again, verse 142, talks about Allah deceiving people. In chapter 14, verse 1 and 2, tells us where Allah decide who to mislead astray and who to guide on the right path. That is the fear of the speaker here, who is busy asking Allah, kindly guide us on the right path so that we will not be misled like those who you have misled. So this verse is accusing Allah of misleading, of being mischievous. There are people who have been misled, who are not then being favored by Allah, and that is why they are being misled. By who? By Allah. How do we know that? It's there in chapter 4, verse 142. Allah confirms it. That the hypocrite tried to deceive Allah, but he is the one deceiving them. You can imagine that, Allah deceiving. Deception is not a lie. It's not just a lie. It is an intentional, deliberate way to manipulate lies and truth to make it look as one. That is what Allah is seeming to be doing here. And that is what we found Allah is doing. So our question here is that, let the Muslim Ummah answer us in the comment section or even call for debate. Who is speaking here? If Allah, as the Quran and the Muslims want us to believe that the Quran in its entirety is a word for word by Allah and it was sent down purely, uncorrupted, unchanged word of Allah, and that it is there documented in the Quran as it is today. So who is speaking? Is Allah also the speaker in this verse? If he's the speaker, who is Allah asking to guide him or her? Because he said, guide us to the straight path. To the straight path. Allah is asking for guidance. Allah is asking for direction. And in the guidance, it must be the correct path. Don't lead us to the path that we will end up being misled. That is the fear of the speaker here. And that is what we are simply asking. Let the Muslims answer and confirm to us. Was there someone who was speaking for Allah that is pleading here for Allah to guide them and speak for them? Let it be confirmed. And if that is true, that someone is actually speaking, which is clearly stated here, from the language we can see that it was somebody, human being, who is helpless, misdirected, confused, that is seeking for guidance, then it will now raise the second question. Why should chapter 43 verse 3 and 4 and chapter 85 verse 22 will lie to us by telling us that there is an original copy of the Quran in and with Allah, and therefore this one we have is a copy sent directly down in the heart of Muhammad, word for word, according to chapter 26, verse 192 to 194. Which one should we believe? Which one is the truth? Which one is correct? Who is speaking? Allah or Muhammad or someone else? That is what we are seeking for, to understand who is speaking in the Quran in this chapter 1. Who speaks in chapter 1 of the Quran? This is our subject of discussion. Thank you very much.